Welcome, everybody, to What the Tech. This is the worst of 2011 show. A drinking show, actually, Paul. This is the show that we are going to drink and complain about everything. So pretty much it's the same exact show, but we're just drinking on air rather than having it under the table.
Right.
How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing well. I'll be doing
is that a
in
knife?
few minutes.
Paul is carving something at this point on the show. So this is the show.
Opening a wine bottle.
A wine bottle.
I should have opened this earlier. I'm so foolish.
I've kept it classy here with Budweiser for the show. I'll be drinking Budweiser. So during the show, we are going to be discussing the things that we absolutely hated about 2011 when it comes to technology. Many things are on our list. Paul's list is very similar to mine. He just has a couple of extra things that I didn't think he would put in there.
Interesting.
Yeah, your first pick, actually, I did not expect that in it. But
I know.
We're going to get to that. Before we start with the things that we hate, I do want to talk about this phone that I got here.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the Nexus, the Galaxy Nexus phone. I have been extremely critical of Android for some time now, and so is Paul.
I hadn't noticed.
No, we love Android here on the show.
I think that Android is the center of everything that's right with technology.
Really? Is that a fact? Can we quote you on that?
Yeah.
Okay. I was not a fan of Gingerbread. I thought Gingerbread was an incomplete operating system, and I've always said Android I'm an Android user. I always felt that something was missing. It was almost like they put it together and they're like, "How about Gallery?" And like, we'll just put it out like that. Don't worry about it. We'll fix it next time. But that's been the problem with Android. With Ice Cream Sandwich, they seem to have corrected a lot of these issues.
If I could just take exception to one thing you just said.
Yeah.
That's the problem with Android? I would say that is a problem with Android.
Well, let's say the UI, right? The UI is not streamlined with Android at all.
It's not cohesive, I think is the way we would say it.
You say cohesive, I say streamlined.
Not cohesive.
It's not cohesive, okay.
Yeah.
I just feel that there were many incomplete parts of this.
Maybe they were just waiting for iOS 5 to come out.
I think that's what it is, yeah. Because iOS 5, it's a complete version. Well, iOS 5, we spoke about this last week. It is... I can't see them milking the current state of iOS any longer.
I agree with that.
Although it's pretty complete.
Apple will surprise us and milk it for 2 more major releases. So
yeah, I don't know.
I agree.
This is going to sound strange, but this version of Android makes iOS look really dated. And I didn't expect to say that, but using this, it's a modern OS, while iOS is feeling about 2 years old to me at this point. And I'll probably get a lot of emails over that. But I
think it's reasonable. Honestly, this is hard for Apple people. I shouldn't say Apple people, like Apple fanatic type people to understand, because iOS, and the iPhone has become like the safe choice. It's the type of thing you feel comfortable recommending to your grandmother.
Yeah.
And I think that falls in very neatly with what you just said.
Yeah, because it's a stable OS. You know that it's going to work. You know that the ecosystem that you're in, a lot of people are already in it with iTunes.
Yep.
Some people already have an iPod Touch or an iPad, so they get this one thing and they know how to use it. But with Android, it's so scattered. And they kind of brought that together with this. I really like the operating system. I like many of the things that they've done. There's some things that I don't like still. I don't like the fact that the widgets portion of this, it's kind of blended in with the apps. They could have added a micro SD slot on this, which they don't have.
That was a curious choice.
But 32 gigs, and the apps are still lacking. That's a major problem here. The apps are still lacking to the point that, that there's an app called Mega Jump. It's a game for the iOS. Mm-hmm. They have one called Hyper Jump, which is an absolute ripoff of the game.
Curious.
It's the exact app taken with a different name. Everything about it.
Google approved it for their
Google
store.
approved it. Yeah.
It's
identical. Some apps still crash.
The Android marketplace is like the mobile version of Usenet.
It really
it can
is.
Be used for good, but all too often it's used for evil.
But you know what the problem is with that? It's because there's so many phones on the market. You cannot really develop for one phone.
Yeah.
While you have that advantage with the iOS platform, and I guess do you say that Windows The Windows Phone development has that advantage too because it's not too many phones, and they all have.
It's not an issue of phones. You're really developing to a spec that is common across all of the phones. There are a couple of features that are only available on some phones, but some of the things that are common include the screen resolution. I would just say most of the basic capabilities. You have to get off into the really fringe area of particular sensors that may or may not be present on most devices, but for the most part, you have a very common set of capabilities across the devices. So actually, developing for Windows Phone is very easy.
I'll give you a perfect example about Android. I have an IRC app for my phone, and I had it on my Droid, which I have here too. The app would crash after running for 15 minutes on this phone, and I know it did the same for the Thunderbolt. After 15 minutes, the app crashes.
Right.
On this, it works perfectly fine. And that's been the problem with Android apps that I've seen for the longest time. Another app is TuneIn Radio. TuneIn Radio does not work on this app, on this phone. It crashes constantly. On this one, it works.
You know, my own Android phone is not exactly brand new, but I have a Droid X, which is probably dates back to last August, so it's about 15 months old. And recently, as part of its revitalization of the Android marketplace, Google has had this sale on music, on TV shows and movies and things.
Yeah.
And so they had 99-cent movie rentals. And I thought, I'm going to do something incredibly stupid and insane.
And they also had the sale on the music, like you said.
Yeah, they just, right. In fact, they had one today.
Yeah.
So I rented a movie through the phone. And I said, well, I'll play this on my TV via it has HDMI out on the thing, and I have a cable. So I told my wife, I said, hey, I rented this movie that I know you want to watch, so we'll watch it on the phone. And it doesn't work. Like, it just crashes. Like the Google video player, which is the player you have to use to play videos purchased from the marketplace, will not even load. It just crashes. That's all it does.
You know what the smart thing for them would be? Say, these apps do not work on these phones. Just and do not allow it to show up.
I don't.
You don't think they? You
No,
think
I
they?
think
The same thing goes for the Google Music app on my Droid. Does not work.
Right.
Does not work. So what can you do? But
every time you run an app on an Android phone, it's like you have to cross your finger, kill a chicken. You know, like you just have to pray that the thing's going to work.
This works, man. I'll tell you, this is a great. The thing that I love the most, and Paul, you tell me if this looks familiar to you. I'm going to pull something up here, and I'm probably going to expose half my contacts list while I'm doing this. So I really, it's okay. It's fine. I'm speaking for the people that I'm going to release their phone numbers. Yeah. Let me see. Let me go to contacts. So before I show it, people who watch this show, there are many new viewers, but I have severe OCD with certain things. My MP3 collection, my photo collection, and my contacts list has to be perfect. Every contact in my phone has every piece of information about them, their social security number, their address. Again, not literally I have their social security number. Some I do, though. I like to keep tabs on people.
You're not putting this up on the screen.
Yeah, I know. I will, actually. But I have everybody's contact image in my phone, and I had to manually go in there and put high-resolution images because the Google contacts that you have listed in your Google contacts are very low res. So I had to go back and change everybody's image manually from their Facebook photo and put it in there so I could have the high-res image. And the reason why I did that...
you overwrote the Facebook images.
Well, Facebook does not sync with this. You remember, they broke up. Facebook and Google had this big breakup, and Facebook does not sync with anything post-Froyo, I believe.
Why do we do what we do? Do you remember?
No clue. Yeah. No clue. So let me show you here. Let me go to camera 3. This is the Google. These are the contacts. Mm-hmm. When I click on me, it's going to show my number, and I don't care at this point. You could scroll to the side.
Oh yeah, like Windows Phone.
What does that look like to you? Yeah, tiles. Yeah. And it shows
okay, but let me ask
you
something. Is there any indication that you can do what you just did? Does part of that screen eke out onto the side that gives you an indication?
Yes, but most people. Here's the thing: on Windows Phone, if you don't have that information, like if I don't have your Twitter information, what happens to the side?
Well, it's not the same presentation. Let me just
okay. With this, it's only your Google Plus and your Twitter.
By the way.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. All right, so let's see. It's not the same, right? So the layout is just different. But on Windows Phone, if I were to go to a contact, and
by the way, someone just messaged me and said, already 22 minutes in, you guys are slurring. No, that is just my speech, sir.
Actually, it's interestingly, I brought up your thing because you're right at the top. I'll hide your personal information.
Okay.
But you can see it says profile, and then where my hand is covering up is your phone number and all that stuff. But then it says what's new. That's what's over on the side. So when I swipe over, what that gives me is whatever social networking updates you've done. So it's probably stuff from Twitter and Facebook, which is actually exactly what it is.
But this is very much like Windows Phone. When I saw the left to right, I was actually surprised. I'm like, wow, what does that look like? And they have this blue thing going, this blue theme with it. I'm like, very Windows Phone-ish. Okay.
I can see this, but it's also like photos, right?
Okay, so I'm going to show you something. Since you show that, you have your favorites list. So you have your contacts. Here it is. You have your contacts. Then you have favorites.
Yeah.
What does this look like?
Well, in the sense that Google does not have a single original idea of its own, I would say that looks a little bit like Windows Phone.
And I absolutely love it, by the way. I think that's the greatest thing they did to the context list.
I just, anytime anyone sees a grid of anything these days, they're like, oh, they're ripping off Windows Phone. You know, and it's not that simple. I mean, Windows Phone is really, it doesn't own the concept of a grid of icons or a grid of
no, but you know that's maybe where we're going. You know, maybe this is where we're going, and I think they do need to kind of advance these operating systems where it's not just little icon, you click on it.
Right.
You know, maybe the whole tile aspect is something that Windows got right, and they are changing the way that we perceive mobile communication. But that's just another aspect. You know, they fixed the text messaging. Text messaging is a lot nicer. Overall, the operating system looks extremely polished. It is UI heavy. I mean, it is graphics heavy. So I'm wondering how this is going to perform on lower end phones.
I'm wondering how it's going to perform on a tablet. How do you think that this will do?
So, you know what? Let's go into that since we're on that. Let's go into our first awful product of the year. And I have to say, we both unanimously.
Before you do this.
Yeah, okay.
Let me bring up the list. We should start from the bottom, don't you think?
Oh, you want to start with the bottom? Mine is in no order.
No.
Where do you want to go?
Were you gonna? Okay. Well, yours is. If I think you're going where I think you're going, yours is near the bottom. Is that what you're talking about? Why don't we just go willy-nilly?
Oh, okay. Yes, right there. Okay, so let's go to that first. Let's go to the Google Chromebook.
Do we need to drink every time we mention one of these products?
There we go. Drink on Google Chromebook. I encourage the viewers to also partake in our end of the year drinking game. If you're 21 and over, of course.
Yeah, you might want to throw out a couple of qualifications there just to prevent the eventual.
Yeah, 21 and over, not on any heavy medication.
I will point out I'm drinking a fine Chilean Merlot. If anyone's interested.
I have a Merlot now. That's what I was going to open, and my wife said absolutely not. That's very good wine. You're not allowed to drink the good stuff.
My wife's tried to get me to drink a bottle of wine that some people had given us, and in what is probably a little too revealing, I said to her, "I'm not drinking gift wine."
You know what I've done? And I know we're going to go off on these tangents today, but we bought 2 cases of wine to give. We bought a couple months ago to give away for the holidays.
Sure.
I drank every bottle. We have no gift wine
left. What you
left.
should just do is you should have taken a picture of you drinking out of a bottle
and just give
and included that photo in your Christmas cards and said, "Thinking of you." You know, or like "Wish you were here."
Yeah.
Like the Stephen Wright joke. There's a picture of the Earth and it says "Wish you were here."
Chris in our room says, I would drink, but I'm kind of at work. I am also at work right now, and I am drinking. Yes. The Google Chromebook. Now, this was a fail in every sense of the word, not because of the concept. I thought a concept made a lot of sense. Have these lower-end netbooks, this is my idea of this, not Paul's. You have this low-end netbook. You could go into schools. You could distribute this amongst kids. Nearly give this thing away because you're going to be hooked up to this web platform. You're going to be hooked up to the apps. You're going to have access to apps, and you could probably pay for apps, and that's how they'll recoup it to some extent.
Okay.
They didn't think of that. They actually priced this thing at $499, $399 to $499, and they went in the market. They're like, oh, well, this competes with Windows now. And no, it doesn't.
And they went in the market. Well, you said something very interesting to me, because looking back over the many years at which I've been, covering technology, writing about technology, going to industry events and sitting in an audience where they demonstrate something that you get very excited about, only to then go and actually try to use the product or the technology, whatever it is, and then be incredibly disappointed because it's nowhere near as good as it was in that perfect demo. That is exactly what Google Chromebook was to me, because I remember hearing about it and thinking it was interesting. I remember they released it, and they did that second developer show where they talked about it again.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is really intriguing.
By the way, Google owes me 2 books that they said they were shipping, and they never shipped it.
Oh, I actually have one that Google did send me, and it's pretty horrible. And it's amazing, because this is the ultimate example of when you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Because Google, of course, is an online company, and so this thing is literally a web browser that runs on a laptop. It's the craziest, silliest thing. When you actually sit down and think about it, it's really dumb.
It is. But many products have come out on the market like that. I mean, you look at every netbook, and they're nearly.
There are a couple of products on our list, and both of our lists, that meet a certain criteria, which is this: how could they possibly have shipped that thing without this thing?
Yeah.
And in this case, they shipped Chromebook without an offline story. They shipped it in the middle of a transition from what used to be Google Gears to what will eventually be HTML5 offline capabilities. And they shipped it when they had no ability for that thing to work offline. I mean, is there anything worse than carting around a laptop that you can never use? It's like the stupidest. It's crazy.
But you know what? Regardless of what it was, if they had priced this thing at $199,
that would have made a big difference.
It would have made a huge difference. And I know people that when they saw this thing, and they know nothing about tech. They just know the basics, and they go, "Wow, Google has a laptop, and it's going to be really cheap. When does this thing come out?" And I got to ask that question 1,000 times, I kept telling them, like, it's going to be $500.
Listen, even in my brightest-eyed moment where I look at the future and I admit that everything's changing, and I think, I do a lot of stuff online. My email's all online. I could do word processing stuff online and note-taking. I could do that online. I could do image processing online. I communicate online. I could use a notebook like this that only works when it's online. And then you actually get it, and you're like, you know what? This thing is terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
No, it was...
I use Chrome, the browser, every day.
It's phenomenal.
Love it. And the sort of artificially or theoretically, the notion that you could wrap a laptop around this thing and turn it into a product sounds like it could be a pretty good idea.
No, and Google has the resources. They could have done something extremely impactful, like said, you know what? If you have a kid and your kid is in school, we're going to give this to you for $50. And go through the school system. Go to the schools and say, listen, we want to work with the schools if whatever.
But you know what? It's worse than that.
But they didn't even do a trial like that.
This is in the darkest years of Microsoft, this is the kind of product that Microsoft would have put out. It is wrong-headed. Google has an operating system called Android that works offline.
And it works well offline.
It's, it would have been better for those people to have waited even 2 years to get into the market with a Google Android notebook than it was to this year ship a completely worthless notebook based on a web browser. This was just bad decision-making, bad product, bad timing, the whole thing. It was
now,
this hits all of the possible check boxes you could want.
Now, I have a list here. I have a list of things that have failed in 2011. We saw Wave fall. Google Wave went away.
These are just Google products.
Google products. So and I am a fan of Google. Don't get me wrong. I use Google every day. I praise this phone that they put out. I praise Android 4.0. I think they're going in a great direction.
But you bought that phone last week.
I bought this phone last week.
Right, December 14th or 15th or something.
Yeah.
I mean, before that day, there was 95% of the year had occurred.
And nothing was
And Android
great.
in 2000, I mean, it sold well.
It sold well, but there was no development. I mean, if you look at Android in 2010 and Android in 2011, it was kind of flatlined. There really wasn't much happening. It was the same exact operating system. They released Honeycomb, and Honeycomb was a major flop.
Right.
It
So,
failed.
in other words, to me, the two big Android news stories of 2011 were we released a tablet version of the OS that we're not giving to anybody, but we will eventually. And, we're being sued by everyone.
Yeah.
Because everything in this OS was stolen or copied from something else. To me, that was 2011.
Yeah. What happened in 2010 with them? I'm trying to think what happened in 2010. Well, you know what happened in 2010? Buzz came out and Wave came out. And or Wave was Wave was 2009 Wave came out.
Wave was Google's version of Microsoft Outlook.
Yeah, but
it was this really big and complex product that, again, on the surface, seemed like it made a lot of sense.
I'm going to tell you something, Paul. I used Wave, and I found it to be extremely useful. If it was developed further, it was extremely useful because what I would do is I would have my moderators in my chat room logged in, my head mods logged in there, and people during the show logged in there. We would all chat. We would all talk, but it was just overwhelming.
I think you're going to see communications capabilities that were in there exposed in much simpler ways across other Google products and probably through Google Plus, frankly. I think that's where they're doing everything like that these days. So
I'm looking here. So Wave folded, Buzz folded. Yep. Google TV was a major flop to the point that Logitech came out and bashed them and said it was the biggest mistake they made. Google Plus,
TV, by the way, I just want to highlight this one, is the rare product that was so bad I didn't review it. I spent $400 or $500 on that. You can see it behind me, that big TV set, Sony Internet TV.
Yeah.
It is one of the most horrible technology-oriented products I've ever bought in my life. And I didn't review it. I just didn't. It was so bad. It just would have been. It would have been like just beating a seal. You know, it would have been completely pointless.
No, and you know, I'm not. I don't hate Google TV. I just feel that they were extremely.
Oh no! Let me. I do hate.
You hate Google TV, yeah. I don't hate it.
It's simple. I went through several years of Windows Media Center. I get it. I get how hard it is to meld, a PC-based operating system with this kind of ancient analog TV crap, and to see it done again, just as poorly by Google, 10 years later, almost 10 years later, with the same little IR blaster baloney and the little thing you have to paste in front of your cable box.
Yeah, when I saw the IR blaster, I was like, oh.
Oh, God, welcome to the 1970s. It's like someone's up on the roof and they got the antenna and you're like, is it better now or now? Give me a break. It's horrible.
But in my opinion, I think the concept of what Google TV did was it made sense. And the only reason why I use Google TV is because it's integrated with my cable. So I don't have to go from input 1 to input 2. That is a missing, and it's so funny, right? The missing link to make these media centers work for the masses and to make it appealing to the masses is that feature. The fact that it piggybacks off your cable provider. And they are the only ones that did that.
But it's never going to happen seamlessly.
Yeah.
Because that would require the TV networks to all work in tandem together.
Yeah.
Their own wider best interest, which is not how those companies operate.
No, that's not how they operate. But to me, that was the most important thing. And to my wife, that's what made it extremely useful. We have a Roku sitting here. We never use it.
My wife's made the same comment. We've talked about the TV we have and how you can bring up Netflix using those Yahoo widget things that are built into the TV, which means that she doesn't have to do an HDMI 1 or 2 kind of switch, which to her is complicated. I hear you, but it's funny when you talk about how the concept of Google TV is so awesome, but the reality of it is so bad. In my mind, that's what makes it even worse. That it's very clear that they knew what they had to do, but that the thing that they released was by definition a huge compromise, and thus is even more disappointing than something that seeks to do much less, like a Roku box or an Apple TV or an even Xbox 360, because those things don't have any aspirations to replace anything. You use them in addition to other things.
Yeah.
The Google TV, if for it to work properly, that thing becomes your TV. And because it can't, to me, that's an utter failure.
And in my opinion, I think they really messed it up with this latest release. I was really waiting for this release, and I was excited for it. And when I saw it, I'm like, wow, they kind of went backwards, and Chrome is useless. If you want to watch anything Flash-based, it does not work anymore. It used to work. I mean, Flash worked great on there, and I used to watch a lot of the shows that I watch via Flash, especially live programming. I tried to pull up our channel. It does not work anymore. It totally crashes the browser, and you get that box where it says wait or force close for all Android applications when an Android app crashes. I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe it's happening on the TV. Yeah, it's bad. But again, total flop considering what happened. Google is claiming that they're going to be on majority of the TVs in 2012. I'm really curious to see how that's going to work out for them. Google Plus, another major failure in my opinion. I have not finished my beer, by the way. This is still the first one, so
you got to suck that thing down because you just mentioned like 5 Google products.
I know.
I would just say for Google Plus, clearly they've picked up some users. I mean, that's kind of the power of Google. They have a lot of people.
Yeah, but they're forcing you in it. You have to remember that.
Yeah, I hate Google Plus.
It's not this idea.
I jumped in early, and I got out because there was no point to it.
Yeah, but it's not this idea. You know, they're claiming these numbers, but it's the same thing. They're forcing you in there. When you sign up for a Google account, a pop-up comes up that says, "Hey, do you want to convert your account to Google Plus?"
Google Plus is an unnecessary duplicate of everything that's already available on Facebook and Twitter. And the only thing that it benefits is Google. And as far as I'm concerned, and I wrote this in the notes, this is Google's version of the Zune. It's just a copy of something else. It benefits no one but them. And they're just kind of hoping that their own success will drive people to use this thing, even though it has no inherent advantages over anything else.
Yeah.
And I'm in the same way that I'm kind of disgusted by the way that Android just copied features from other mobile applications, a mobile operating system.
But that's open source, right? Don't you see that a lot in open source?
I don't want to excuse it, but I'm starting to think that this might be endemic to Google's culture because Google Plus is the Android model applied to social networking. Let's just see what everyone else is doing and steal it. And it's just disgusting. I feel dirty using it. I wish there was a way to remove the Google Plus-ness from the stuff that I use of Google that I like Gmail and you know the other stuff, because it's just now it's like part of the toolbar. I hate even seeing it.
No, I don't
use it. There's no reason for
it.
Google Plus to exist. It's a technology circle jerk. That's all it is.
Yeah, but and it's very incestuous if you go on Google Plus and you see the people that are using Google Plus.
Oh, it's all these tech guys.
Yeah.
And they're like patting each other on the back. Let's see who can be the biggest curmudgeon. Let's see who can see the biggest jerk thing about some other guy. Let's see who can, be the snarkiest about this post. It's everything that's wrong with technology, nicely isolated in one corner of the internet, and let them stay there. To me, Google Plus is awful. I hate it. I just hate it. There is no
Paul
reason
hates
for
Google
that thing
Plus.
to exist. None.
So how about Android? So Android, you would consider a flop in 2011?
Well, see, it's hard to say. We just described 2 products, Android and Google Plus, that are actually doing very well from a numbers perspective. And, I have my opinions about these things, but it doesn't change the fact that they're both very popular. So I would say that they're a flop in 2011 from the perspective that matters the most, which is their flops as technology, their flops as products, and their flops as original ideas. They're just disgusting. There are signs that Android is getting better. You've got this new phone, and Android 4 looks like it's going to be pretty good.
But to me, Paul, honestly, and I don't want to sound like a fanboy, and I don't want to seem like I have this, the euphoria of this phone has kicked in for me. But it's night and day when you compare the two. Okay,
and that's great. So. Look,
But I'd love to know what other people that are using this device think. I mean, maybe that's just me because I had a Droid. I had an older phone.
Well, the reviews have been overwhelmingly positive. They're very similar to what you've said and have the same complaint. The one complaint everyone says is the battery.
Yeah, I mean, don't think about getting out of anywhere out of the 6-foot range that your power cord is. Like, there's no way this thing's going to survive.
Yeah. So it's amazing to me that smartphone battery life could actually take a nosedive for the worst, but I guess it has. So it was already so bad to begin with. But I guess you could buy they have the bigger battery and it has a different back for the machine, so that kind of bulges out a little bit and you get more life and all that. At least you can remove the battery. I mean, that's one of the nice things about that device and about most devices, non-Apple devices certainly. The battery is removable, so you can always buy another battery, and batteries are cheap. So I wish the battery life was better.
Yeah.
I can bring I have a Samsung Focus S, which is a similar machine in some ways. I would imagine that there are two major factors that are contributing to better battery life on this machine. One is that it's not a multi-core processor, and two, it's never hitting an LTE network. So
yeah, and the display. I mean, the display. This thing sucks up a lot of power.
Absolutely, all of the pixels in the display. So those things together, I think, make a big difference. And that's the difference. The Samsung Focus goes all day, basically, like any smartphone. And it seems like the Nexus Prime goes about half that. It's really bad.
I over the last couple of days, I made a couple review videos of features and tips for the phone. I am being encouraged by upper management here at the GFK Network to post this in the chat room,
Yes.
and I will. If you go to guysfromqueens.com, you can see the latest reviews that I've done for the Samsung Galaxy Nexus tips and tricks videos. So, and you know what? It's been helpful for many people because if you are a new user to this, you do not know how to go into the settings and turn off certain features. They kind of hide that away from you.
Doing so would help a lot.
Yeah. I want to back off from Google a little bit, and I know we're going to revisit it when we go to tablets. But I do want
other stuff that stinks.
There's a lot of stuff that stinks, and one thing was 3D. I think everybody forgot about 3D this year. 2010 was a year about 3D, and 3D flopped. And I think the Nintendo 3DS was a perfect example about how, and I've said this for a while, people don't care about 3D. It's great when you think about the idea, but when you actually use it, it's useless.
Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned 3D. There were two items I had on my list that I removed just to make it an even 10. And the two that I removed were 3D TVs and dedicated portable gaming machines like the 3DS. I bought a 3DS. I gave it to my kids. I bought 4 games. I opened 2 of them, and I said, here, you guys can play with this. Let me know what you think. And, of course, for one day, maybe 2 days, they were all agog over this thing. I was really nervous about the 3D effect. There was a note in there that for younger people, and especially you're supposed to turn down the 3D effect. So I asked my daughter in particular if she would.
Well, that's a Nintendo thing, When I was a kid and when we had Nintendo, it used to come with a note saying if you played this game for over 8 hours, you have to back away because it could cause seizures.
Okay. Well, in this case, they were talking about eye problems, and I don't want to inflict anything like that on my daughter. So I asked her if she would tune down the 3D effect. So I left it out there. It was in the den. They could sit there and they could play the game, and they did for about a day and a half, and then they forgot about it. And so a week or two went by, and I brought it up again, and I said, by the way, if you don't play with this thing, I'm just going to return it. I just, it was X amount of dollars, whatever. And they were just completely uninterested. So there was that initial interest in 3D, and then it just kind of went away. And as recently as this past weekend, I went Christmas shopping with the kids. We were in Best Buy, and we sat in front of a Best Buy display where you put these glasses on and you watch the 3D, you go through a demo thing. And both of them, who were dying to see this, were very interested in it, stopped watching before the thing was over and said, this is dumb.
Yeah. See, that's
dumb.
That's the thing. But I know people that absolutely love it. I mean, they go crazy for a 3D Blu-ray that comes out.
I cannot imagine sitting in my living room and I can't, we lose
putting
remotes.
on glasses. Yeah, putting on glasses.
I mean, I don't. We lose the remote that we use all the time, like the one remote that pretty much does everything. That was lost as recently as 2 days ago. I mean, the notion that my family could somehow pull it all together and have 4 sets of 3D glasses that we were going to use to watch a movie is so ludicrous. It's just inconceivable. And then you get into the thing, well, they have the types of TVs that don't require the glasses, but if you've ever seen one of those things, it's kind of a different experience. And
I mean, it's unanimous in our chat room. I just took a poll and I asked the chat what they think of 3D, and they said it's a gimmick. I mean, unanimously. Yeah. Vance Willis in our chat room said that he had the Evo 3D, and he sold it after 3 months of use.
Right.
It's just one of those things where the idea of 3D is kind of embedded in our minds, and it's been there since the 50s. 3D.
And by the way, it's never taken off. So
never
3D
taken off.
was around in the 50s. It went away. Came back in the 80s. Remember, they had a couple of 80s 3D movies. It was a Friday the 13th movie, Alan Quartermain and the whatever that was called. And then it went away. And then it came back with Avatar. And then it's going to go away again because nobody cares. And this is exactly what I said about the Google Chromebook, which is when you make hammers, everything's a nail. The companies that make this stuff want you to buy the same stuff over and over again. It works in the record industry when you had like tapes and 8 tracks and then CDs. It works with movies when you go from VHS tapes to DVDs to Blu-rays, and now they want to do it with 3D versions of those things. And the truth is, not interested. And they're in a tough spot because I don't know where you go from 1080p. There are obviously new versions of HD coming down the pike.
Yeah, 2K and 4K.
But yeah, that's just, look, I've already seen Blu-ray images that are clearer than what I see with my own eye when I'm out in the world. So yeah. I don't know how much crisp does it get so crisp that it actually like cuts my eye or something. Like
Listen,
I don't
this
understand.
is my point with this. Why don't we? Here's a crazy idea, and this drove me crazy when the whole 3D thing was happening. Early in the year, Verizon Fios here in New York released the Yes Network, the Yankee Network, in 3D. Yep. They released I think SNY, which is the Mets station, in 3D, and MSG had a 3D station, and ESPN too. And I went berserk because we don't have basic channels that we would expect in HD, but we're going to 3D now. Hey, Verizon, why don't we concentrate on bringing stuff to HD first rather than bringing, some crappy SD picture to me?
Yeah, I mean, why is it on the all fiber network? I can actually get channels that pixelate for some reason.
By the way, I was in a feud on Twitter with Verizon over the week. They released MSG in HD here in New York City, and we weren't able to get MSG because of the lockup between Comcast and Verizon. And finally, they agreed on letting this channel on Fios, and Verizon made a big deal. And I tweeted to Fios, one down.
Google TV will never work, but please continue.
Yeah, I wrote one down, 50 more to go. Way to go, Fios. 5 HD channels for all of 2011. And I saw like a bunch of Fios people, Verizon add me, and one guy DM me, and he goes, we've been doing our best to add, and I guess he's like an employee, but he wasn't on like the Verizon whatever, and he took great offense to my tweet. And he goes, we've been working our best. It's not our fault that major networks are locking us up and we're not allowed to add it. And I go, well, you already have Viacom stations on. Why can't you add the rest of the Viacom stations?
Right.
And he never responded.
They're working hard.
They're working hard over there.
They're working hard.
I mean, it just baffles me on how it's 2011, 2012 is here. We don't have history, military in HD.
Why isn't everything in HD? That
exactly.
should be.
Yeah.
Why isn't there some cable network I could pay double for and get everything in HD? Why?
By the way, MSG is not for Chinese food. MSG is Madison Square Garden. They have their own channel here in New York.
Awesome.
Yeah. By the way, Paul, the only garden.
Oh, fuck. Wow. that almost triggered a profane response, but yeah, okay.
Okay, the Boston Garden counts.
Yes, it does.
There's only 2 now. So 3D waste, Nintendo 3DS waste. Paul, you pick one from your list, because I see one that I'm very surprised, actually, that you put this on.
Really?
Yeah, I will highlight it here. There you go.
Oh, the first one.
Yeah.
All right, what the hell? I'll throw it out there. I've been complaining about it a lot. I have been amazed by how crappy the Kinect is. It's just terrible. And I say that having written a very positive review of it last year. I should have waited. There's one thing that I've been meaning to do, that I've been talking about doing, that I never do. And I've always, I don't know why, but I've always envisioned it as a series of articles that I would call 28 Days Later. And what I would do in this series of articles is I would go back and I would look at the reviews that I wrote a month ago and see if what I wrote at the time still applied, because your experience with things changes over time. And some of the things that seem true at the time are proven not to be true, or, your opinion just evolves because of experience. I mean, that's the way life is. And the Kinect is maybe the best example of this, because when we first got the Kinect, it was a lot like the 3DS, although it lasted longer, in that everyone was interested in it. Everyone had heard about it. We had people who were friends of our kids, or even like older kids or older people in the neighborhood coming over to check it out. Our babysitter used to come over early when it was her turn to babysit to play on the Kinect. And everyone was very interested in it. And then January came, and that was the end of that. The Kinect sat there and it gathered dust, and no one ever used it again. And I would say in all of 2011, there were a couple of moments where the Kinect was kind of dusted off, just like the Wii before it. Some cousins would come to visit and stay with us for a few days, and they would they used to bring out the Mario wheel game on the Wii or whatever, and they would bring out Kinect Adventures or something, and that would be it. They'd do it for a couple of days because it was kind of a fun thing to do with a group of kids, but they never picked it up again. We never bought any new games. Nobody ever cared. That was that. And so I moved it into my office, and I use it basically just for testing purposes. But it is amazing to me. Honestly, the most amazing thing, well, maybe it's not the most amazing thing. There are two amazing things about the Kinect to me. Microsoft refers to it as a motion controller, although to be fair, in their advertising, what they really say is that you don't need to use just, a hand controller to control the experience. It's not just about this hand motion stuff. It's about voice.
But that's their way of marketing it to people that have an Xbox for media purposes and not gaming.
Okay. The voice stuff is okay. Tellingly, the voice stuff shouldn't require a Kinect. I mean, you should be able to just plug a microphone into your Xbox and that stuff would work fine. I mean, arguably if they were going to remake the Xbox today, they'd probably just add a microphone to the front of it. I mean, they wouldn't need a Kinect to do the motion control stuff. To do the voice control stuff. The motion control stuff is terrible. It's always been terrible. And it's the type of thing where you're sitting there and you're trying to get it to see your hand, and then it finally does, and then you move your hand across the screen to select something, and just as you get to that target, the on-screen hand jitters off screen, and you have to re-find it again. And it's aggravating, and it's constant. And it's just badly made. It's just first-gen technology.
You think it's a hardware, or you think it's software implementation in the?
It's both. I think the hardware and the software are lacking. I think there are certain improvements they can make to the software, but the hardware limitations are what's going to hold it back. And the hardware limitations involve such things as, will this thing work in a room that's smaller than 6 by 12 or whatever? You really need a big room for this thing to work decently in. And I don't live in a McMansion. I live in a normal house, so I don't have these humongous rooms. I can't move furniture around to play a Kinect game. The second aspect of the Kinect that's amazing to me, and this is just as amazing, is that it's almost like there's this groundswell of people who, for whatever reason, consider themselves to be like Microsoft enthusiasts. And the Xbox is like the one shining beacon on the Microsoft side where people can point to it and say, this is the one product that Microsoft made that's like anything Apple does. People love it. They don't care how many problems it has. They don't care how many red rings they had, how many times they had to send it back. They love this thing unreservedly. And by criticizing the Kinect, I'm criticizing the Xbox. Thus, I am an asshole.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating for me to hear from people who are almost violently opposed to my criticism of the Kinect, even though I sort of suspect they never use it because it just doesn't work.
Well, they bought it, so they have to love it. How dare you dislike something you paid for?
There's a thing with Apple fans, Apple fanatics, where you're criticizing Apple, you're criticizing one of Apple's products, and thus you're criticizing them because this is a decision they made, and they feel it very personally. And that's what I see on the Kinect side. As I wrote in the show notes, I find it very interesting that the only improvement that Microsoft made to the Kinect in all of 2011 was to promise to make a new one, and they only promised to make it for the PC. Now, I expect the new one to be made available for the Xbox 360. I sort of expect them to make some improvements from a software perspective to the current version as well. But the truth is, they made all these promises about like what this thing would be capable of. I called them on it. I wrote a blog post where I said all this stuff in this video is complete bullshit. And then they said, well, we're coming up with a new one next year. And it's going to be much more reliable. It's going to be much more, able to zoom in on small things. You will do, be able to see, make facial, it will know your facial expressions and all this. And I'm sorry, but like to me, that's just laughable because I sit here and it can't see this. And you're telling me it's going to recognize my facial expression? I'm sure it will. I'm sure it will. The Kinect of today cannot. And I think the Kinect of today it is very much like that stuff we were criticizing about Google, where someone else made something cool, i.e. Nintendo with the Wii. Microsoft ripped it off. It took them 3 years to do it. Yes, it is a better version, but it's really just the same thing in the sense that you have these cartoonish, childish games, by and large, that aren't very interesting to play, require this stupid device, and then no one uses it, and it just sits there unused. And,
so
and in that way, it's just like the Wii.
Are we we're expecting a new version in 2012, right?
Yeah.
But it's for the PC.
I'm sure it'll be for the Xbox too. You know, it doesn't really matter. I'm sure it's going to get better. It can only get better. But my point is, they came out with this thing last year. It was in the market all year. It never got any better. It's not any better. They improved the software in the Xbox to take more advantage of Kinect features, so that's kind of neat. But it's still a lousy experience. And when I do the motion control stuff, because like I said, I've been testing it and I keep looking at it like it's going to frown at me or something. Um, it works so poorly, and I'm just amazed at how bad it is. It's too bad.
Yeah.
I feel betrayed by it.
Yeah, because I think over time it's going to evolve into something that would change almost computing if it does evolve in this Minority Report style way of gesturing and things like that. But currently,
it's natural computing.
Yeah,
but
currently,
see, natural computing is not a feature. I'm sorry, it's not a product. Like today, the Kinect is a thing that you buy. Natural computing is part of a thing. Natural computing will be part of Windows. It will be part of the Xbox. It'll be part of your TV. It'll be part of your phone. The time when this thing is successful is when you don't notice it. It's when you walk into your home and you say something that turns the lights on. And you walk into the room and you say something that turns your TV on. And then you say something that brings on the show you want to watch. It's not a feature called Kinect. It's not a product that you bought in a store. It's just a part of these other things you already have.
Yeah.
And so this is just... this is like the first Cylon in the Battlestar Galactica thing when you go back and you look at the silly early designs, but now they've come up with these, more advanced units.
Yeah.
It's just like that. It's just the first one.
It's
like the right flyer.
Well, here's an example. And it's kind of sticking to the Microsoft theme right now. The Microsoft Touch Mouse, the Explore Touch Mouse, and the Arc Touch Mouse.
Microsoft makes great mice for computers. I use one. It's called the Explorer Blue Track.
Yeah, so do I.
I have humongous thing. It's beautiful. This is a great mouse. It's a great mouse for many reasons. It's very accurate, high resolution. It's very big, which is important from an ergonomic perspective. This past year, they released those 3 mice that you just mentioned, and they're all terrible. All terrible.
Well, they're trying to change it, and I know a lot of people that use that ball mouse that we saw in the 90s, and I never understood how anybody uses that. I know a lot of people love it. I could never use it. And I've always wondered, the mouse works well. I mean, for what it does, it's almost perfect in a sense. Why are you trying to come up with this alternate design that is not going to work? And I think they know. They know that that's not going to work.
It's got to be hard working at Microsoft software. I've talked to these guys.
Software or hardware?
Hardware.
Okay.
They have people who are ergonomic experts. They know that unless you have an ergonomic keyboard, that over time you're going to do damage to yourself physically. But Microsoft sells a lot of non-ergonomic keyboards.
Yeah.
They also know that if you use a small mouse for too much time, that you will hurt yourself physically. And they sell a lot of those mice. The problem is people buy mice and keyboards for different reasons. I mean, I happen to be a writer. So I can't sit at a laptop and type all day long because I will eventually hurt myself. There's no way around that. That's just, everyone's a little different, but you're gonna basically come down with carpal tunnel or something approaching.
Yeah, I mean, I have it in my right hand. I have a very difficult time. Yeah. And let me ask the viewers: are there any lefties that actually use the mouse with the left hand?
So my wife is a lefty.
What does she use it with the left hand?
This is a problem. So we've gone through various mice with her. The original Arc Touch mouse was designed as a designer product. It was not meant to be a serious mouse. It was the type of thing that you could kind of fold it up into a little thing. You could put it in a little case. You could put it in your purse, and it was like a designer element. It was like, I have a nice looking laptop. I want a nice looking mouse, and this was it was for women by and large, or smaller people, I guess. Ergonomically, a disaster. This past year, they came out with the touch version of that, the Arc Touch mouse, which is not actually a touch device. What it has is a touch strip down the middle, which is just for secondary things, essentially not for touch. And then they have these 2 other touch mouse, both of which are disasters. If you're familiar with Apple's touch mouse product, which I think is called, not Mighty Mouse, but the one that
the Magic?
The Magic Mouse.
Yeah.
There's a great video, a hilarious video, when Apple did the first demo of Lion, where I don't remember the names, Craig Federini or whatever his name is, one of the guys in charge of Mac OS X Lion at Apple, tried to use one of those mice to do the touch things, and his hand is shaking because it's really hard to manipulate touch gestures on the surface of a mouse.
Yeah.
So in the intervening time, Apple has come out with something called the Magic Trackpad, which I've called the Tragic MacPad.
And I know a lot of people that use that, and they love it.
Well, here's the thing. When you had Snow Leopard, that thing was useless. It brought everything that was wrong with a Mac trackpad on a laptop to the desktop. It didn't make any sense. But in Lion, what they've done is they've added these multi-touch gestures. All of a sudden, that thing makes a lot of sense. And I got to tell you, using that trackpad with Lion is really, really nice. But I find it very telling that in the same year that Apple just did what I described, Microsoft is releasing mice that go back 2 years to what Apple was doing 2 years ago, which is already known to be a bad design. And that's what they released as touch mice in 2011.
So to sum it up, we all agree that leave the mouse alone. Don't mess with the mouse. Just leave it.
I think there's a happy multi-touch future coming to Windows and Windows 8. It's not going to happen with either one of those touch mice.
I even want to go back. I want the ball. I don't want the laser.
Well,
I want the ball, and I want to take it apart, and I want to clean it.
But I don't miss cleaning those mice. You know, you get all the garbage that go on the little roller wheels, and you'd have to kind of clean those things out. It's been tough. You know, I don't like wireless devices. One of the big transitions with the Xbox 360 was I was really surprised to discover that wireless controllers would work. I never thought that was going to work, and now here we are years later. They're fine.
And they're working great,
And they work fine. On my home computer, I use a wired keyboard. I use an ergonomic keyboard. It's wired. It's humongous. I love it. I would never replace it with a wireless keyboard. The Explorer Blue Track that I mentioned is a wireless mouse. I replace the battery in this damn thing all the time. It drives me crazy, but the nice thing about it is I can use the same mouse when I'm traveling. So,
but your wife, does she use it with her left hand or right hand?
Yeah, so I'm actually.
I know one person, and he uses the mouse with the left hand, and he uses the trackpad with his left hand. And I look at him like he's doing voodoo. So I don't get it.
She does use the left hand for the mouse, but she's gone through various mice. I'd have to go look. I don't remember what she's on. Each of the mice that I mentioned, not each of the mice, some of the mice I mentioned she tried this year. The original Arc mouse she tried and gave back to me. The Arc Touch mouse she tried and gave back to me, because these are not righty designs, right? These are mice that would work equally well, you know, for lefties and righties. They're hard to find. I'm not sure. I don't remember what she's using. I'd have to go look. It's probably an older mouse. It might be that Richard Stark, or that might not be the right name. The Stark mouse. It was an earlier designer mouse that Microsoft released.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah. I can't remember the name.
Philip Stark.
So we've picked on.
I think it's an old mouse. Yeah.
We've picked on Microsoft. We've picked on Google. Let's go to my all-time favorite, HP. The PR blunder heard around the world, as I stated many times on the show. Yeah. HP. Where do we go with HP? To sum it up, HP decided that the multi-million-dollar. Well, how much did they spend on Palm, by the way?
I think it was like $1.9 billion.
Yeah, it was $1 billion deal. Yeah. So the $1 billion that they spend on Palm, out the window. Forget about it. Yep. They're also going to kill their PC division, and they're going to the cloud. Now, this is what that PR said. That press release said.
Right.
Then they said, no. We never said that. We never said we're killing PC. We're thinking about selling it off. But we are killing WebOS. We are killing the Palm brand.
Yeah, and then they fired the CEO.
And then they said, no. We're not killing the Palm brand. Here you go, $99. And then now they've turned WebOS open source. Yep. They've decided that they're keeping the PC brand. By the way,
that
good
was
move.
Maybe the one nice thing they've done all
year.
Yeah,
but I don't think they did it because they wanted to do it.
I know. But I mean, there are sometimes technologies just die. Remember when Apple CEO Steve Jobs returned? He was up in the air for a little while about what to do about the Newton. A lot of people wanted to buy it and just keep the thing going. And he killed it. He didn't allow anyone to buy it. He just killed it. So that thing just died. You know, sometimes things go away. So at least, I'm not saying WebOS will be successful, but at least it has a chance.
I think it'll be successful. I think the thing about WebOS is that it's one of those operating systems that it makes a lot of sense. The environment makes a lot of sense. It's not a flawed operating system. The hardware was the thing that was flawed from the beginning.
It's wonderful. The software is great. I mean, the hardware was, unfortunately, the first WebOS device, the original Pre, was underpowered. Palm never had the money to really back this thing. It was never on the right wireless carriers, at least not in the beginning. There were a lot of problems there, but the software has always been wonderful. Earlier this year, my recommendation was that Amazon should buy WebOS.
Oh yeah,
I've
said the same.
For its tablets instead of Android. How much better would WebOS be than Android on so many of these devices? It's astonishing to me how many Android devices there are in the world. I mean, I'd love to see.
But that's because it's free. I mean, Paul, they're putting it on.
WebOS is free now too.
Yeah, so we're going to start seeing that. I mean, in 2012, we're definitely going to start seeing that. But the way that HP handled everything, it was almost like they went into panic mode. And they just didn't know what to do. And for them to come out and say, well, they're thinking about selling off the PC brand, where does that leave HP? Because they are a PC. I mean, of course, they're known for their printers, but they are a computer manufacturer. They make computers.
New management came in at HP, and they looked at this thing objectively. And they...
Which you're not, you should never do.
Well, but they said, look, this PC business infuses everything that we do, even if it lost money. And by the way, it makes billions of dollars a year.
They are the number one PC manufacturer in the world, right?
But it's not just they are the number one. They actually make money. They make a lot of money. This is a good business. I mean, people always try to draw these Apple comparisons, like Apple makes $127 per PC. I mean, HP only makes whatever it is, $16. I have no idea. I'm making it up. Okay, but HP sells like a cajillion of these things. This is actually a pretty good business. You know what? It doesn't have to be, because it feeds everything else that HP does. What they found was that even if they never made a cent on PCs, it made sense for HP to make PCs. And by the way, it took them like 2 weeks to figure this out. I don't know what the problem was. The guy they had brought in to run HP, Lee Apotheker, I think his name was basically a guy whose only mission in life was to break companies down and prepare them to be sold off. And I think he was literally dismantling HP.
But he's the one that was in charge of the buy. He was there when they bought.
Yeah, no, right, exactly. I mean, think about what they did under this guy's reign. HP was Microsoft's longest running, thanks to the compact deal, and biggest partner, right, in the PC building space. Closest partner. Every time that Microsoft came out with any product, whatever it was, smart displays, phones, pocket PCs, whatever garbage thing they were doing on the side, HP was always there to release a version of it.
I mean, let's go back to the Slate. When that HP Slate came out, that was the answer to the iPad, right?
Those
and
guys
I remember
were in lockstep. They were like Italy and Germany in World War II. I mean, they were just the same team, you know? So the first thing the guy does is they buy an OS so we don't have to rely on Microsoft anymore.
Yes, and that's the thing that people don't remember. When that buyout, when that merger happened, when they got Palm, they stated that every computer in 2012 they'll have Windows, but they'll also have WebOS running on there. And everybody started saying, is this the IBM route? Right.
And you got to imagine the raised eyebrows over in Redmond over that one. And then, hey, maybe people will like WebOS and then we won't need Windows. Okay. Yeah. So obviously that didn't work out. And then that didn't work out. Well, and by the way, let's give it 3 months to see if it works out. And since it didn't work out, apparently in 3 months.
But it can't work out in 3 months. I mean,
of course
it doesn't make sense. Palm failed. You know why Palm failed? Because they ran out of money, not because they weren't putting out good stuff.
That's
what
exactly
happened?
Right.
The iPhone came out and it slapped everybody in the face, and nobody was ready for this because the Palm was the best phone on the market. Palm and whatever BlackBerry was comparable at the time. I was a Trio guy. I had a Trio 600, 650, 7, and 750.
But you know something? As far as viable responses to the iPhone, WebOS was first.
Let me. You're absolutely right.
In no small part due to John Rubinstein, formerly of Apple. He used to run their iPod business.
No, and Palm was very aggressive in trying to grab market share, but the problem was with Palm.
Well, they had no money.
They had no money, and
they blew it all to launch. I mean, they raced to get this thing out. They did it the right way. The developer tools are good. The development environment itself, this kind of web-based thing,
heavy
smart.
marketing, heavy marketing.
By the way, you could look it up and tell me. Whatever. Let's say that WebOS came out in 2008 or maybe 2009. Microsoft next year will release a product called Windows 8. Maybe you've heard of it. That will has the exact same go-to-market strategy. We will let you use your web development skills to easily create applications that run under our new environment. WebOS did it first. And they failed spectacularly. I mean, they just failed.
Yeah, but do you think, let me ask you, Paul, let's go back now. Do you think the fact that they started putting Windows Mobile on their platform, on their phones, was the nail in the coffin for Palm because they weren't concentrating on developing their operating system and trying to be competitive, but they were relying on Microsoft?
No.
An operating system by Microsoft that did not work.
No. And in fact, if you were a Windows Mobile fan, and God help you,
which I was,
that phone, that Palm Treo, whatever it was called,
I think it was 700W.
Okay, is that what it was called? I have one. Well, whatever.
I have one too. Yeah, but 700.
That was the greatest Windows Mobile phone ever made. Period.
Oh no, you're talking about the 800 Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 800 Pro was excellent.
It had accessories and things in the box that would sort of be a prelude to what you would see with WebOS. Even the charger was beautiful. It had a beautiful thing you could sit it on to charge it, but the wall plug was beautiful. I mean, they just did a nice job. The packaging was nice. That phone was a holding pattern from Palm. They wanted something where hopefully they generated a little bit of money that could keep the company going while they built the new thing. And I think they were always going to just kind of betray the Microsoft thing. I feel bad from the Microsoft perspective because if you went into it like I said, as a Windows Mobile fan, like I did, I remember one of the last meetings I had with the Windows Mobile team, they all had that Palm phone. And I said, this thing is beautiful. I mean, how do I buy one of these things? And they said, you got to buy it direct. It was like $600 or $700. And it was like, oh, that's what? I mean, that was inconceivable.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful.
I went from, and I've said it a couple times, I went from my Trio 750, which I thought was the greatest phone in the world. And I was one of the only people that I knew using a Trio at that time.
That's an iconic phone.
Yeah. And it was phenomenal for what it was. It was a great phone, but it got dated really quick. And then I went to the HTC Touch Pro.
So, oh yeah,
and I love, by the way.
Also, I mean, okay,
when I got that phone, I love the stylus. I was all about the stylus on that thing. It was a whole thing.
Every year I make a calendar for my family, right? Photos, whatnot. And in years past, the photos that I've chosen have been photos from the past year. So if you look at our calendar, like it would be like photos of things that happened the previous year. So this year I wanted to do something a little different, and I dug back into the photo archives, and I actually went through year to year. I found all these baby pictures of my daughter and my son, which they're going to love when they see them. I found pictures of my wife and I when we were dating, really old pictures. One of the pictures I found of myself was from a Comdex where I was it stopped in a hallway, and in my hand I have a Windows Mobile phone of a Pocket PC of some kind.
Wow.
I'm using a stylus to tap on the screen, but also in my hand below that device is a flip phone, like a phone, because those were two different things back then, of course. So there's like a PDA and a phone, and both of them are kind of in my hand, but I am using the stylus to do some terrible thing on the screen, But yeah, that's the way things work.
I mean, we came a long way, but back to Palm. Palm folded because of the iPhone. If that iPhone never came out, I think they would still be in business. I don't think we would have had the revolution that we've had in the last couple of years when it comes to mobile operating systems.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course.
The aggressiveness. I mean,
for that. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, and we might have something that's great, but we wouldn't have had the aggressiveness that we saw in 2008, 2009, 2010, and now. Still, yes, I mean, we're still playing catch up.
You give Palm credit because they responded quickly and effectively. Technically, what they came up with was great. If you look at the way Microsoft fumbled around for a few years, they tried to make Windows Mobile work. They did Windows Mobile 6.5, stupid. RIM, same thing, stupid. Android, okay, that made sense. People forget, but the original vision for Android was a flip phone thing that had nothing to do with smartphones.
It was absolutely awful, yeah.
Completely different. It was terrible. So the iPhone impacted everything. Palm was very quick compared to everyone else to respond. And I think, with the exception maybe of Windows Phone, and then maybe Android 4.0, which is where they finally get it right, it seems. The most effective response of all as well. So we should give them credit for that. But what HP did to Palm is disgusting. It's disgusting. I have a note
in what sense? Killing it or the way
buying it and killing it is shitty. It's just shitty. And if I read this today in the paper. Saab finally is going out of business. Okay, here's the story of Saab in a nutshell. In the past 10 years, GM bought Saab some years ago because all the U.S. car companies were buying
everything.
European car companies, all of which, by the way, they've given up since. But whatever. So when GM went bankrupt and was rescued by the federal government, they had to get rid of a bunch of stuff. They got rid of Hummer, they got rid of Saab, they got rid of Pontiac,
Oldsmobile,
etc. All right. So Saab gets purchased by this company from the Netherlands or Belgium. I can't remember which. Stryker, I think, was the name of it. They didn't have any money. They kind of kept the thing going. But one of the things that this company did as Saab was to license Saab technology from GM, like engines and parts. And it allowed them to make some Saabs. They actually did release a couple of Saabs. There was a 9.3 and a 9.5, and they were talking about a 9.1 that was coming.
Well, do you remember when Saab went to Subaru and said, "Hey, make us a car"?
Well, that was GM.
That was General Motors because they had no idea.
By the way, General Motors in 1995 released a Saab. I think it was a 9.1 or a 9.2. I don't remember. That was a Subaru, and a 9.7 that was a Chevy Tahoe truck.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
First year that they didn't make money. It was, it was awful. So let's take this beautiful, wonderful brand and we'll GMize it. And then when we have our own problems, we'll jettison it. Okay, fine. So now it's like this way smaller company. The Swedish government doesn't want to save it. GM is licensing it its own technology, and they're going out of business. So they're not going to make it. They go to, I think the federal government or the Swedish government bailed them out, I think 3 times. Finally, they found a buyer from, not a buyer, an investor from China. Here's the problem. The only business of GM's that predated their bankruptcy that still makes money is their Chinese auto market. They sell Buicks in China.
Absolutely. And they sell tons of them. We used to do a car show here at the network. Yeah. They sell, when you think of what the Chinese market is buying, they dominate. Buicks. They dominate the Chinese market with their Buicks.
It's crazy, right? So GM said, look, if you enter into this partnership with this Chinese company, we're not going to license you the engine designs anymore. You're going to have to come up with that yourself. Well, that wouldn't work. They needed the engine designs and they needed the investment from China to survive. So GM effectively killed Saab twice. The second time for good, because they wouldn't allow Saab to sell GM engines in China as Saabs because that might impact their crucial Chinese market for Buicks. Saab is dead.
Yeah.
This is exactly what HP did to WebOS and to Palm. They bought them, and then they killed them.
Yeah,
it's tragic. It's tragic.
Well, do you think they bought them with the intention of, well, if it doesn't work in 3 months, we're going to kill them? Or do you think it was upper management deciding, well, we need to bail out?
It is completely unrealistic, as you pointed out, to think that 3 months in the market is going to determine whether something is going to be successful.
But financially, Paul, HP was not in major danger.
No.
For them to bail.
So, I have to say, the only good news is they have open sourced WebOS. That means that this thing could survive. It's in some ways its best possible.
No, and I'm telling you, they're going to start making the hardware again too. HP is going to make the hardware, and they're going to put out a new one, and
yeah, that's great. So this company, which has been, schizophrenic about WebOS, that's the company I want to buy WebOS tablets or phones from. I would never buy an HP WebOS device now, but at least they let it free. It's the only saving grace of all of this is that they set it free. But for them to do what they did and buy this thing, make all these promises, release one product, one tablet and one phone. They never even released the second phone, at least not in the United States. and then just cast the thing free.
Yeah.
I mean, ugh, God, it's so tragic. It's just tragic.
Well, this kind of leads into another one of the worst of 2011, and that has to be RIM. RIM, lack of hardware, the Playbook, QNX, losing the name BBX at the last minute, which is phenomenal.
It's a constant cavalcade of dumb.
I mean, they are the new Palm, right? They are the Palm of 2008, 2009.
By the way, back when they had 50% market share in the U.S., do you know what they have today? 9%.
Who, RIM? RIM?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't know that.
That's how far the mighty have fallen. They should be a warning for anybody in the tech industry about how bad things can get so quickly.
I mean, but the excuse for their slow development has been enterprise, right? We have this major enterprise sector that uses RIM, but if they only have 9% of the market,
is buying now iPhones.
iPhones, yeah.
By the way,
doesn't
they're
matter.
buying Android phones, which is ludicrous, but whatever, they are.
But I don't think it matters anymore.
It doesn't matter.
I think the whole idea that you're buying enterprise for their email support and for their Exchange support, everything is Exchange support at this point. And RIM is secure. I don't think people care about that. I just when it comes down to the boss liking a phone and going to that and saying, well, no, this is what we're sticking with. That's what it really comes down to. And I think a lot of people have kind of migrated to whatever.
That's exactly right. There's a phrase that we use called the consumerization of IT. And it hits in two major ways. One is what you just said. It literally is a decision maker of some kind, a CEO, a CTO, or whoever he is. Goes down to IT and he says, I want to use an iPhone. And they say, well, the iPhone is not on our list of approved devices. He says, I don't give a shit what list it's on. I'm using an iPhone to make it work. And now, years later, by the way, that stuff works great. So there's no problem. But the other way it hits is people coming up into the workforce, and they have certain expectations. Those expectations are very different now than they were 10 years ago. These people don't have Microsoft Office expertise. They don't expect Windows PCs. They might want MacBooks. They might want iPhones. They might want iPads. They have completely different views of what's important to them, and this is what they expect at work. Confronted by this, people are doing what you said, which is basically turning to Exchange ActiveSync, which is maybe not as full-featured as, the BES stuff that's available on BlackBerry. Frankly, even in the Windows Mobile days, I never understood why BlackBerry was so successful because basically, BlackBerry plus a BlackBerry Enterprise server was like this huge, complex, expensive thing you had to add to your enterprise just so people could use a certain phone.
Yeah.
But if you use an iPhone or a Windows Mobile phone, an Android phone, you don't have to add any extra hardware. It just works. To me, this is it's so obvious. I don't even understand. I don't understand how they ran their coattails of this BS stuff for so long. RIM is busy changing their enterprise server stuff so that it can work with
where do you think in
iPhones
2012,
and Android phones.
In 2012, where do you think they're going to go?
They're going to go to the toilet. They're gone.
You think so?
Yeah.
You don't think there's any hope in this BlackBerry 10 operating system?
No. No, I don't. I think that too much time has gone by. I think it's over. I think this is the end of it. I just don't get it. I think we're done.
Well, I think they have a hope to kind of grab that sector that they have. I think they could keep the percentage that they have if they release something decent.
I don't think it matters. There used to be people that really cared about BlackBerry, that really cared. And I think that those people are becoming a much smaller minority than they used to be. People care about these touch computers now, touch smartphones, iPhones and Android phones primarily. And I think there's also this big possibility for the future where if Microsoft does what I expect them to do and make Windows 8 the phone, you get into a very interesting situation where now we have this device that we can manage better than any smartphone. Why not just use this as the phone? The the Exchange ActiveSync capability is very good. And they vary from device to device. iPhone is very good. Android's very good. Windows Phone today, I would say, is pretty good to good. But A Windows-based PC is on a completely different level from a management perspective, and that changes the the scorecard dramatically. And then what never gets said in any of this is RIM, and I don't think RIM matters anymore almost at all. And I'm afraid that I've lost you. Have I lost you? I think I have. I think we're experiencing technical difficulties. Let me see what I got here. I guess we're switching back. I will keep talking.
Here, hey, Paul, I'm back.
Because
we
that's
had
what I
we had
get
a
paid.
problem with one of the machines, and I had to go turn it off.
Okay. I heard kind of a, there's a sound that Skype makes when it dies.
Okay.
And then I didn't hear that sound, but I heard another sound that was, it's like the sound of someone leaving the call, I guess,
Is that what it did?
It was like bleep, bleep, kind of, I'm gone.
No, that's weird. No, I had to run off because one of the machines in the studio just went blue screen.
As full of alcohol as I am, I will just pontificate about some subject matter.
I got a blue screen while you were talking about HP.
Of course you
about Palm. I don't know. It's their major flop of 2011, and I don't know if they'll ever regain that market share. They're gonna try.
They're dead. They.
What do you think will happen? Do you think they're just gonna go away?
Yeah, there's a. How do I say this? It's like the MacArthur thing. MacArthur was the right guy to retake the Philippines, even though, by the way, historically, I mean, the guy was also the wrong guy there because he kind of screwed up the Philippines, but he wasn't the right guy in the Korean War. Let's put it that way. And the co-CEOs that RIM has right now were the right guys to get them from the beeper company that they sort of were to the cell phone company to this thing that they've become. They were the right guys. Just like Palm was the right company for a period of time in this industry until Apple stripped them of that title. RIM is now, they're just trading on past glory, and I don't think they can actually fix it.
Theoretically, if you look at it, these one-shot companies like a Palm, like a BlackBerry, that only they make the software and the hardware, are not going to be something that we see. We're going to see more of these licensed softwares like Windows and Android and I guess WebOS in 2012. Sure. But Apple's probably the only one that could possibly do it because they have such a control over what they do, and they have a great PR department that convinces everybody that this is the device that they need. And they make good devices. I mean, that also comes into play.
I don't think it matters.
You don't think so?
No. It doesn't matter. RIM right now is intellectual property and their patents, and that's it. I think that I've always thought, like I said, even when Windows Mobile was all that Microsoft had to offer, I thought that RIM's enterprise story was a facade. It was just fake, and that it shouldn't have existed. They shouldn't have been popular. And now there are so many great phones out there.
Yeah, and you also have to remember, Paul, they got dominance when? Was it 2007, 2008, when there weren't physical keyboards on many phones that were coming out?
Well, there was also a kind of a transition where people, you have one. You have one right there. You have an original Droid.
Yeah.
There was a thought, and my wife did too, by the way, that I have to have that physical keyboard. Because sometimes I'll need to type some kind of a long email or whatever, and I will want that keyboard. But what you discover over time is
awful.
You know what? The virtual keyboard works fine.
Yeah.
And for some people, that's a transition. And I think the early insistence on RIM devices, even in the face of the iPhone, was from those people who couldn't understand how they could possibly be as productive on a virtual keyboard as they were on a hardware keyboard.
Yeah.
And I think we've gotten by that. There will always be people that have preferences. I don't mean any, and there will be phones to address those. But I think RIM as an entity goes away. I also think, it's funny, between RIM and HP and Yahoo, who neither one of us mentioned on our list.
Oh yeah, Yahoo.
This was quite a year for like corporate stupidity, like bad decision making in public. Kind of an amazing thing. Really kind of an amazing thing. And speaking of which, actually, maybe we should go to one of your items, which I didn't list and I should have. which is the
Netflix.
The Netflix one.
Yeah, I think they're probably using the same PR company that HP's using, because it was a very confusing time. Netflix got a lot of crap because they raised their rates, and I really was not upset over that. I didn't feel like that was unfair. I kind of understood that they're raising their rates. Doubling the rate was a little weird to me. I thought they would raise it by a couple bucks, but they pretty much said if you want DVDs and you want internet is $7.99, DVDs is another whatever. So you combine, it's going to be like whatever, $20 for the month to get both. I never used the DVD. The last DVD I got was Paul McCartney's Concert for New York that I never opened. And I had it on Blu-ray. So it really didn't affect me. I actually just mailed it back after having it for 7 months. I just mailed it back.
Really?
Yeah, I had it sitting here. I never opened it because I had it. Somebody gave it to me as a gift.
Okay.
And it just sat here. So I'm like, I'll just mail it back. It didn't affect me. So I just recently went down to the $7.99. But people were really upset because people used the DVD. I mean, we don't.
I really thought that the initial reaction to this was kind of self-righteous.
Yeah.
And this will pass.
Yeah,
and
people
my own
are getting
reaction
a little.
was, I sort of thought that I was getting away with something with Netflix. It seemed like it was too good to be true, right? That these guys were pumping millions of dollars into acquiring content for the streaming service. And what I was really paying for was this DVD thing on the side. But I was getting this awesome streaming service. I just want to remind people that all you have to do is look at the weakness of Amazon's own streaming services, Amazon Prime.
It's awful. It's awful.
It is comparatively, right?
Comparatively, yeah.
It's like Netflix must have been 3 years ago. To remember how bad this could be and always was, and that Netflix has really done kind of an amazing job. But what they blew horribly in 2011 was the communication of this thing.
Yeah.
They've just, and by the way, not just once, not just twice, like 3 times.
You know what the biggest FU was by them? And I'll tell you, I remember that because I was so shocked that a company would do this in 2011. Like a massive company, a big time company would do this.
Yeah.
They did the rate thing. They got all this crap over it. I mean, they just got so much shit over that. Then at 6 in the morning, 5:45 a.m. during the summer, I was up that day. I remember the time. I see an email from Netflix coming. They go, "We are sorry." And I go, "Oh,
this will be good."
They're going to turn around and say, "You know what? We're going to reverse this whole idea about splitting it if you're an exist." And I thought, and this is before I'm reading it.
The same, by the way, I know exactly what you're talking about because I don't remember where I was or when it was, but I saw that and I thought, okay.
Yeah.
Here we go.
And I'm saying, okay.
And you read.
And I said there's two scenarios to this email. One, if you're an existing customer, you could get both DVD and internet play.
Yes.
Same rate, whatever. We're not changing it. Or they're going to say, we're scrapping the whole extra cost. It's the same cost. No problem. $12.99. This is
Our bad. Sorry about the confusion.
Instead, we get this convoluted email apologizing, then explaining, then pretty much saying very nonchalantly that they're coming up with another company.
Yep.
And
this is going to solve all the problems.
I read it, and Paul, I've never done this. I actually thought I just wasn't awake enough.
So by the way, thank you, because I had exactly the same reaction. I don't know that I had the exact same thoughts about what was going to be the outcome, but I had my own thoughts. But I read it, and I said, okay, here we go.
They're fixing it.
It's coming. And Reed Hastings. Let me go read that again. Nope.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I do want to point out, and I have it here just to show you. I this right here. This is I believe Netflix's apology to me for all of the crap that happened this year. And what this is, and I assume everyone else got one of these too. They sent subscribers an extra DVD. And that's what this is for Christmas. So I happen to get 2 DVDs at a time. Mm-hmm. I got 3 this time.
They're personally apologizing. By the way, my wife just handed to me and corrected me. She has not mailed the Paul McCartney Concert for New York yet.
It's still there.
It's still here. This thing has been here since I think.
Well, that explains why I've never gotten it, you jerk.
I've had this since April of 2011. Just sitting. That's why I like Netflix. But again, that was the biggest blunder. So they created this Qwikster company.
Qwikster. Yeah.
And then they just said, "Oh,
I don't understand why would you change the thing
without having it?"
In other words, you have to make new envelopes for that. What?
Yeah.
You already have the envelopes.
Why would you?
Why do you change if for some magical reason you have to change the name of one of these things, change the other one.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no physical component to it.
Yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't think of that. Yeah,
it was so crazy. It just never made any sense.
I'm wondering because it's rare to see a company do that. It's really rare to see that they say we're splitting it off. We have another company, another venture. But there's no backbone to it. We don't know what's happening. Oh, yeah, by the way, never mind. Ignore the whole thing. Let's ignore the summer of 2011. Let's just forget about the entire summer.
We're sorry.
Yeah, we're sorry, but we're not doing anything about it.
We're sorry, but we're obviously not that sorry.
Yeah.
Awful.
Well,
someone has to pay for this content. I mean, you didn't think they were doing this out of their, the goodness of their hearts or whatever.
You have something on your list that I absolutely love, and because I was about to buy this, and I thought it was such a good idea, and I really thought it was going to do really well.
Okay.
I'm highlighting it here. The Dell Inspiron Duo.
Yeah.
I was behind this thing. I was so excited for it.
Remember the ads? There was a great ad for this.
Yeah.
Actually, it must have been I guess it was a Windows 7 ad. It must have been maybe even a holiday 2010 Windows 7 ad.
Yeah, so I went to buy this before holiday. I went to buy it exactly. Yeah. You know what? For my wife's birthday last November, I went to buy this.
Yep.
And I was really excited for it. And I picked it up, and it had the biggest flaw in a hardware that I have ever seen. And it was the fact that where it flips, because it was a bezel and it was a screen in the bezel. You could see right through the other side. Yep. Between the bezel and the screen. So there was always this gap in between the screen and the bezel.
I know.
And I go, I can't imagine.
It was basically a $1,000 netbook where the screen could swivel within a frame. If you picture a laptop computer, right? You open the screen. There's a bevel that goes around the screen. Imagine that is a frame and that the screen can flip within that frame. And then you could put the thing back and the screen can be on the outside and it's a tablet. But it's a tablet that gets like 3.5 hours of battery life. It was...
Oh, they're not making it anymore, huh?
Crap. So the reason I bought this was... We got to sort of go back in time. It's a year ago.
Oh, you bought it?
I bought it.
Oh.
And returned it.
I'm sorry.
No, you're sorry. Well, here's why I did it. It's a year ago today, right? People are writing me. They're like, Windows 7 has been in the market for like a year. Microsoft was talking up all these tablets that remember the HP Slate that was going to kind of come.
Yeah.
It did, but not really. But that was CES. I got to really think back. I mean, 2010?
Which one?
Talking up tablets.
The tablet revolution thing?
Tablets are coming. Oh, here they come.
2010. Well,
right.
We saw it.
Yeah, when
you know what? When did we see that Lenovo?
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? The U1?
Yeah.
We saw that.
It was 2011, but
2010. It was 2010. Yeah.
S series idea.
The U1. The Lenovo U1. Yeah.
Oh, U1. I'm sorry. Okay. I don't remember. But people were writing me and they were saying, you're the Windows guy. How come you're not writing about these Windows tablets? And I was saying, well, these Windows tablets are terrible. I can't with good conscience get one of these things, You got to write about a tablet. I got so much email about this. So finally I said, okay, I'm going to get this Dell Inspiron Duo thing. And I'm telling, listen, just like Google TV, there was no way I could write about this thing, like review it. It was so awful.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to see. I want to see if I did write anything about it.
By the way, the U1 came out in 2010. It was CS 2010 because I'm looking at a video from Revision 3.
This is the prototype thing that never.
Yeah, that never happened. That was actually a great idea in concept, but it wasn't running Android. It was just running its own
Gotcha.
Linux version. So what happened? You
Yes,
used to put it back
very
in.
Special. That was a cool looking thing, a little ahead of its time. So I'm going to send you. I will send you this in the chat thing. I did a preview of the Inspiron Duo, and you can see pictures of it and whatever. And
where'd you post it, by the way?
On the Super Safe for Windows. I just sent you a link in the.
Okay. I can't access that, so I'll just go to my. Okay. Yeah, I'll just look it up on the.
Actually,
site.
I'll put it in the document.
And I just closed the doc.
Okay. It's in
no,
there.
I'll open it up. Okay.
So here it is. It's like this reflective screen. It's a small screen, 3.5 hours of battery life. And it's like, this was not an iPad response, right? And actually what I wrote, I just read you part of my.
No, it was a gimmick. It was a gimmicked dual core netbook that, you know what, for $500.
It cost like $1,000.
Yeah, it was like $799. Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote that this thing was a tepid response to the iPad. I said that I would spend some time with it. You have more blah, blah, blah. You have this to choose from. This is not the time to buy such a device. What's terrible is that a year has gone by. Yeah, literally a year. I wrote this in December 2010. There is still no device that makes sense to buy. There are true slate devices in the market now, like the Samsung Series 7 or Series 9 or whatever it's called. There really are no good Windows tablets today. There just aren't. I mean, I'm sorry. I expect this to happen with Windows 8. I hope it's going to happen.
Yeah, but it's going to change Windows 8, but they're going to face a whole different uphill battle, and that's
you know what?
Conditioning people to think.
Listen, someday we may have magnetic cars that float in the air. I don't know. That didn't happen in 2011. The Dell Inspiron Duo did. It is a piece of crap.
It is a piece of crap, and I you know what? Big flop, major flop in my opinion, major flop because I was really excited for this thing.
It was featured in a Microsoft ad.
It was
7.
Yeah.
It was not. I don't remember the ad, but it wasn't to the cloud, but it was one of those ads where, someone opened it up in an internet cafe or a coffee shop and, they flipped the screen around. And I remember seeing it in the ad and thinking, oh, that thing looks cool because it looks cool.
So you have something on your list that I'm actually surprised about, and you have the Kindle Fire.
Yeah.
On your list. Explain.
So the Kindle Fire is a paradox or a contradiction of sorts. It is a great device for what it is. The problem is it's not the right device for some people. It's just the right device for certain people, and it is exactly the wrong device for some people as well.
By the way, I have a Kindle Fire right here.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you see what I've done to it.
Let's see.
I don't have the
you hacked this thing.
I didn't. You know what's funny? In the marketplace when this thing launched.
So they've updated this.
Yes, and you can no longer hack it. But I have not hacked this. Everybody thinks I have, but I have not. When the thing launched, there was I forgot what the UI is called. Hold on, I'll tell you right now.
Oh, you have an app that actually.
I have an app, yeah, and I forgot the name of the app. I think it's called like Launcher EX. It is no longer in the store. They've taken it out since, but it makes it into Android. I mean, it just looks stock.
Here's the thing. The Fire is great for what it is. It's great for the price and all that stuff. There are problems with the Fire. It's not configurable enough. They don't have a 3G option. That stinks. They don't have an option for different memory allotments. That stinks. It kind of requires you to be online with a Wi-Fi connection to really be used effectively, except in certain conditions. Obviously, you can download books to the device. That works fine. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the content stuff requires you to be online. Music, videos, TV shows and movies, that kind of stuff. And it's a lousy device to use if you're going to be getting on a plane, unless you want to just read a book or maybe play some games, that kind of thing. It's highly curated, which I like. It's highly tied to the Amazon ecosystem, which is good or bad, depending on your perspective. I'm okay with that kind of thing. But it's just not, for me personally, it's not the right device. And it really is kind of an epic fail in that regard. By the way, I've already been screwed over, but one of the problems with that carousel interface,
which I absolutely hate. I think it's so.
I hate it. I hate it.
You know
I hate it.
This makes it unusable for me.
Yeah. So let me tell you how this has betrayed me already. I'm taking my family to Barcelona in February for the kids' winter vacation. So I bought.
That's a great time because I'm going to the Dominican Republic.
Oh, good. So I bought a couple of books for my wife for Christmas about Barcelona. One of the books I also bought an ebook version of on the Kindle, which was delivered to the Fire. My wife is now reading the Fire, using the Fire to read the newspaper. So she saw the Barcelona book, and she's been reading it. And this is one of the things I was going to give to her for Christmas, and now I can't because she's seen it on the Kindle. There's no way to hide it.
Yeah,
it just appears, and it's like, so.
But
kind of
I mean,
stuff,
but Paul,
it's
for the price.
Oh, it's a great price.
Phenomenal price.
Yep. I almost put the iPad on my list of worst of 2011 purely for the price. The iPad is a luxury item. It's the type of thing people aspire to get. It's just too freaking expensive.
But here's the thing, Paul. To play devil's advocate, considering what else has come out at that price range.
No, but the iPad has allowed that to happen. In other words, by being, I don't know, not irresponsible, but by being ignorant of the wider market, the iPad has been able to maintain an artificial price point, and that these other people have just had to kind of adhere to it. They don't have a choice.
Well, I see. Here's the problem with the price point: the fact that the iPad is competing with a netbook. In reality, when it launched, this was their answer to the netbook, to the $499, $599 netbook. Steve Jobs refused to put out a netbook.
My kids both use a netbook that costs $329. It gets 8 to 9 hours of battery life. It has a 10.1-inch screen. It has a full keyboard. They use it for homework. They use it to watch YouTube videos. They use it to play Flash games online. It works great for them. They're little people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And by the way, they have 320 gig hard drives as well, so that you can actually store a bunch of stuff on there. Not 16 gigs. I mean, we're talking.
Yeah, but this was Apple's idea, right? They're going to respond to the netbook. They're going to put out the iPad, which it's a phenomenal device. I didn't have an original iPad. I have an iPad 2, and I love it because I understand what it is. And for me, what the iPad is, it's a device that sits at the side of my bed.
Right.
And when I'm in bed and I want to go and read the news, or I want to send a quick email, or if I want to look up YouTube videos, that's exactly what it's for.
Except for one thing.
Okay.
Except for one
thing. Go ahead.
So you're right. And the way I use it is I might be sitting out in the den watching TV at night. We had a question about an actress who was in a movie.
And you look it up.
Seen her before. I grabbed the iPad, look her up. This is where we saw her before. Okay. Quick, easy, it works great. These things cost like $675.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife 2.5 years ago bought a computer for $625 or $650, which will last her another year, which is a much better deal than an iPad. But the point is just, for the situation you just mentioned, for the situation I just mentioned, for the situation where you're on a plane and you want to watch some movies or something, the iPad is great. There's no doubt about it. It's a beautiful device. It's a luxury device. It is 100%. Not a necessity.
Yeah.
It is a luxury device. It doesn't make the worst 10 list because it doesn't suck. It's too expensive.
No,
it's almost too nice.
It's almost too nice.
It's kind of a weird thing to complain about.
Yeah, no, hardware wise, I'm talking about the looks. It's beautiful. It works great. It's fast. It's super
fast. I use an elliptical trainer. It sits exactly for whatever reason on the little shelf the thing has. It's great for watching movies while I'm doing that.
But every other tablet is a major failure in 2011.
Yes.
The tablet market itself, and this is the funny thing, and I've said this, the tablet market is an imaginary market. They're all going based on the iPad being successful. Well, the iPad is not a tablet. The iPad is an iPad. So let's take the iPad out of the equation. Well, what has been a successful tablet in 2011? You know what? The Kindle has been successful.
The Kindle Fire has absolutely been successful.
It's not a great device.
By the way, also the Barnes & Noble Nook has been successful.
Yeah, successful, but not a great device.
And then it's like everything else. There's probably some Samsung tablets that done okay. Maybe the Motorola Xoom did okay.
But why would you want an Android tablet? Why? If you're gonna
This is
pay,
exactly
Paul,
my point.
if you're gonna
Because
pay
right.
$600 for
I want
something,
something that looks just like an iPad, but has no access to that whole ecosystem.
yeah,
that
and it
makes
runs a
the
little
iPad
crappier.
special.
Yeah, and the operating system is crappier.
Yeah, could I have one of those? Do you have something like that?
Do you have?
I like, and I want to spend exactly the same amount of money.
You know what it's like, and I use this analogy. You go into the Mercedes dealership.
Yeah,
and I know I'm going to get emails because I'm comparing Apple to a Mercedes. But you go into a Mercedes dealership and you say, how much is that S-Class? And they say $100,000. And you go, okay, I want to spend $100,000, but can you get me an Infinity?
Right. Or remember the first year that Lexus came to market. They came to market with a LS, I think it was called.
The LS 300.
That was
the 300.
Their Mercedes ripoff. Or a year or two ago when Hyundai came out with like a G20 or whatever that car was, looked just like a Mercedes. Those cars were successful because they cost like one-third
of the car,
of a Mercedes. That's why those things were successful, obviously.
Yeah, you can't take.
I don't want something that looks like a Mercedes that is not a Mercedes.
But do you think, Paul? Do you think
it's exactly the same price as a Mercedes?
Do you think it's the manufacturers saying, you know what, we want to be at this price range because the iPad is there, or realistically, the hardware costs so much at this moment?
Here's the problem.
They have to put it there.
Here's the problem. If you're Samsung or HTC or Motorola or whoever, there is no way to subsidize the cost of this machine. You have to price it in such a way that you can break even at the very least. And that's where Apple gets you, because Apple has all these great deals with the component manufacturers, the people that make the screens, that make the chipsets, that make the even like the fabrication of plastics that go around the bezels.
Yeah.
And so forth. The only companies that can compete with that are the companies who can make money somewhere else. That's why Amazon and Barnes & Noble have been able to come to market with devices that are much cheaper. They're not trying to make an iPad. They're trying to make a device that can buy into their ecosystem and help them sell more content to customers that they already sell, books or other products and services in Amazon's case. Amazon is either breaking even, making a little bit of money, or losing a little money, whatever it is, on the Fire. The Fire is a device that Apple would never make. There are too many compromises. Even Amazon, a year from now will sell a much improved version of the Fire, just like they did with the original Kindle. But I think that it's healthy and normal for this device to exist in the marketplace, because not everyone can afford a Mercedes-Benz.
No, 100%. Yeah,
there will always be customers for Hyundais and Kias and Suzuki's and.
But the problem is right now in
whatever.
the market, there's a huge separation between the iPad and everything else that's coming out.
I think this is this is already changing. When the iPad came out.
No, Windows 8 is definitely going to change that. I mean,
it's not just Windows 8
understandable.
though. Even this Christmas season, the iPad will have dramatically less market share than it had last year. Dramatically less, only because of the Fire and Barnes and Noble Nook.
Yeah, because it's
only
$200, compared to.
Okay, but it doesn't matter why. I'm just saying it will happen.
Yeah, it'll hurt it.
Next year with Windows 8, with ice cream sandwich based tablets from Android, including a Google specific tablet. I think we're going to see a big change, and we're going to head toward that more normalized future that we've always.
And this goes back to what we were saying: the iOS platform, it's becoming outdated.
Yeah,
it really is. I mean, when you compare,
no, there's no doubt.
When you compare the iOS environment to the Google environment, at a time you would say they were very similar, but it's come to a point where it's. There's a major difference.
Yeah, so you're missing. So both of those environments have things that are missing that are in Windows Phone. Both of them are missing things that are iOS is missing some things that are available on Android, like those widgets or gadgets or whatever they're called. And they'll get there. There's a weird creeping complexity that occurs that we already saw with the iPod, that we're going to see with the iPhone, and we're already seeing with the iPhone and the iPad, where you have something that started off as something very simple, but then you add and you add and you add. And then you make assumptions about people. We just assume that people know we swipe down from the top of the screen, and There's a notification center there. There's no way to discover that except by mistake.
Sure.
Or because someone told you about it. But that becomes the baseline of knowledge for using an iOS device. That's a far cry from the original design or the original vision of that kind of a product.
Sure.
But that's where they're heading. And so you can only, or that's where they are. I mean, you can only evolve it to a certain point, and then you just have to start over. I mean, not that this is like a huge competitive advantage for Microsoft, but because they did so poorly in the mobile space, they really did have to step back and rethink things.
Yeah, they have the luxury of doing something drastic.
Right. Just like the iPhone did, by the way, 4 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it was a total different way of looking at the way we do mobile computing, in a sense.
There are advantages to that.
Yeah. I have one last thing on the list, Paul, before we wrap it up, because we've nearly done 2 hours here.
That's
for the worst of 2011.
I'm only about halfway through this bottle.
Are you really? That's it? I'm down to 3. I've had 3 beers already. On an empty stomach, might I say. Here we go. We're drinking right now. Paul, by the way, we're drinking out of the same type of glass. Cheers, Paul.
There you go.
We have the same type of glass, and we did plan that, by the way. The AT&T T-Mobile merger that was an utter failure. When they announced this, when AT&T announced that they want to acquire or merge with T-Mobile, but when you have a big company merging with a small company, that means pretty much they're buying it out.
Yes, it does.
I mean, you look at except for Sirius XM, because XM was a bigger company. Sirius went and merged with them, and they pretty much destroyed XM.
Okay.
I had such a feeling that it was not going to happen, that they weren't going to allow this, considering the fact that there would be no other GSM providers as a source of competition. AT&T would control the GSM spectrum. Sprint is nearly dying. I mean, Sprint is doing awful. I don't know how they're doing since the iPhone. If you've noticed, they haven't really announced anything since getting the iPhone.
Honestly, that says more about Sprint's inability to compete than anything. I don't think that the iPhone gave them a significant bump.
I mean, they paid Apple a ton of money to get the iPhone. It was a very, by the way, nonchalant type announcement that the iPhone is on Sprint.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard units sold for Sprint. I mean, they haven't made.
I don't think it's going to be pretty.
No, I don't think so. I don't think it is, and I think Sprint is kind of falling apart. But with that said, we eventually will be left with 2 major providers. We're going to be left with AT&T on the GSM side and T-Mobile and Verizon, I should say, on the
except
CDMA
that eventually these things are all going to be on LTE, aren't they?
And they're all going to LTE, but the different frequencies of LTE. It's not the same type.
God forbid.
God forbid everything is compatible. So Sprint's LTE and AT&T's LTE and Verizon's LTE are totally separate, and that is the problem. You can't roam on each other's
it's
service.
It's amazing how often we run into this kind of stuff, whether you're talking about cable companies are like this and all the TV stations, music licensing across various locales, all this stuff. It's so crappy. It's awful.
But nonetheless, when you look at where we are in this country with aggressiveness in the mobile service between mobile internet and mobile phone communications, it's a bad spot we're in because we're only left with 2 major companies.
Sure.
I did not think this merger was going to happen. I had such a feeling, and I said, you know what? They're not going to approve this. AT&T already has that big stigma with them that they're this big evil company that's going to eat up everything. We saw it happen in the 80s.
It's funny you said it. I thought it was going to go through.
You thought it was? Okay.
It seems like anytime there's a deal of this magnitude, there's a certain segment of the population that shows up to oppose it. And so we've seen this before with various corporate purchases. I think my perspective on this was skewed a little bit because Google was allowed to buy DoubleClick, right?
Yeah.
And get that stuff. And it just seemed like, we have this experience on the European side of the fence with the wireless carriers there to fall back on. How does that work when there are 3 major players or 2 major players and 1 minor player? Yeah. And not too bad. And I think that there's this element of a lower tier, even beyond T-Mobile or beyond Sprint, of Cricket and all of those other kind of regional players, like kind of fill in the gaps, and that maybe that
Yeah,
would make
but isn't
the
Cricket
difference.
working off of like?
Well, they all are, right?
They're
all
working off of the other ones.
T-Mobile or Sprint or Verizon, of course. Yeah, of course. They're sort of like resellers or whatever. But I don't know. I can't say I'm amazed that it didn't work, but I sort of figured, okay, this will happen, whatever. And my own experiences with AT&T have evolved over the years. I mean, when I switched to AT&T for the iPhone, I was a happy Verizon Edge user. I had a Motorola Q with a very high-speed data plan, and I could tether it to my laptop, and it worked great. And then I went to the iPhone, and everything fell apart. I mean, the iPhone itself was beautiful, but the data stuff was crappy, and you couldn't tether it and whatever. So what you find out over time is a lot of those problems between the iPhone and AT&T were the iPhone, not AT&T.
Sure, yeah.
AT&T actually works pretty well on Windows Phone. Surprise, surprise. And AT&T has great plans for people who travel internationally like I do. And I am one of those rare people that I'm okay with AT&T. If anything, AT&T has much better customer support than Verizon does.
Yeah, I've told the story a couple times on the air. I had, what did I have? I had AT&T first, then I went to MCI.
Wow.
It was MCI, right? Yeah, MCI, and then became what? MCI became, what was it? MCI WorldCom, right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, I had MCI. Then I went to Nextel, which became Sprint. And then I went to Verizon, and I had phenomenal service for Verizon. I was blown away how great Verizon was. Until one morning I woke up, and Verizon no longer worked in my neighborhood.
Jeez.
I mean, literally, Paul, I went from 4 bars to 0, no service ever.
Now, why is that?
And I still have no service ever. I have 0 bars with Verizon, while AT&T, which has been awful for many, many years here in New York City, is dominant in my neighborhood. But my problem is very local. I mean, if I walk away from my block, which is not a big street I live on, if I go up the street, I have 4 bars. It's only on this street that there's no Verizon service.
I've actually often considered buying one of those cellular repeaters.
Yeah, but here's the problem: it works on 1X, not 3G.
Yeah, and they're all
which is stupid.
Network specific. I'm on AT&T. My wife and my kids are on Verizon. My home happens to be a dead spot, a dead zone for anything. I mean, so none of our networks work well here. It's just the way it is. Well, maybe I should have paid more attention to the to the naysayers of this deal. I mean, here's the most fascinating factoid.
The fact that they have to pay $4 billion to T-Mobile.
Yeah, actually, so factoid is the wrong word to use, as my coworker Sean told me. A factoid is in fact something that's incorrect. But here's the most interesting fact about this AT&T deal. I'm sure that AT&T had their reasons for wanting to buy T-Mobile.
Spectrum.
I guess so.
That's what they claim.
Okay. I don't quite actually get it. I don't run it. I don't run a wireless business out of my house or whatever. So whatever. But I never quite understood it. But the one statistic I saw that I found particularly interesting was for AT&T to independently develop its own next generation LTE network without any help from anybody would have caused an investment of $4 billion. So they decided that they were going to buy T-Mobile instead for, what was the sum? Like $59 billion?
It was something obscene, and then they had the breakup clause.
And if it didn't work out, they were going to pay Deutsche Telekom, the owners of T-Mobile,
$4 billion.
$4 billion.
Yeah.
So,
but that means they were positive.
They could have just done it on their own. They could have just written a check.
Yeah, I'm curious on why.
Why go through this?
Well, that's because they don't want the competition.
Yeah, okay, right. So in other words, the side benefit is you remove one of the major players. Plus, they become the #1 wireless carrier in the United States, right? Because they have all those subscribers.
Yeah. I don't know. I knew it was doomed. I knew it was doomed. Because T-Mobile's very competitive with their pricing. Unfortunately, T-Mobile does not work where I am. I mean, at all. It does not work.
So yeah, what is unlimited data for nothing? What?
Yeah.
How does that work out?
Yeah.
I guess it depends on where you are. I mean, you can't say to someone, "This is the best wireless carrier," because it's going to depend not just on where they live, but where they travel and what their usage statistics are. I mean, for me, the reason I went with Verizon Wireless, and the reason, frankly, Verizon would probably still be the best choice, is that if you're traveling within the United States, by and large, and again, this will vary widely depending on where you go, Verizon has the best coverage in the United States. They just do. But I also travel to Europe. One of the neat things about AT&T is I can go to the website and say, just for this month, I want 200 megabytes of international data. I want to enable international texting, and I want cheaper international calling. And then when I get home from my trip, I turn it all off. And
yeah, see, I don't. When it comes to me, I don't even need a cell phone. I just stay in my compound all day. It's like a cult here.
Well, but that's the point. It varies from person to person. There's no way to say this is the best.
Yeah.
It really changes depending on what your needs are.
One thing that was not on the list that I can't believe I forgot was AMD. AMD to me is one of the biggest flops of 2011 on how they have fallen behind, by so much when it comes to high-end computing, when it comes to the mobile market. Whenever I see a laptop with an AMD logo, I kind of cringe.
Kind of feel bad.
Yeah, I'm like, ugh, this is not going to be good. But they really fell behind when it comes to.
It's like, what do you call that? I don't remember the name, but there's like a chipset that's basically their version of the netbook. It's like I had to buy a netbook, but I was too poor to afford an actual netbook, so I bought this AMD Fusion based.
Yeah, AMD Fusion
thing.
Yeah.
It's like, that's too bad.
No, and it's awful. I mean,
that's just terrible.
They're just awful.
So you must have seen the press release today.
I saw the one that they announced that there's a firmware upgrade for the chipset, and that should fix it by 1%.
So, AMD has a slightly different way of describing that. Okay. According to AMD, they have raised the bar on desktop and notebook performance. So I don't know if that jives with what you're thinking, but I feel bad for AMD. I mean, through no fault of their own, it's like they walked into the cave and the bear was sleeping and they kicked it, and then they woke it up and now they're screwed. There's nothing they can do. They're just too small. And I think that's what happened. That's the fear. That's what Netscape did to Microsoft in 1998 or whatever year that was. I mean, you have to be careful because that company that has all these resources and international locations and researchers and facilities, they might actually show up. And that's what Intel did.
If you compare the i7 to that bulldozer chipset that they put out, I think it's an 8-core chipset. When you compare the 4-core to the 8-core, the Intel blows it away. I mean, blows it out of the water, and that's not good, especially when you're marketing yourself as a competitive gaming.
I'm sure the
platform.
AMD chip is half the price. No.
Yeah, it's like $2. Okay. I mean, that's the truth.
There you go. I have a better microprocessor in my pen.
But when you take these chips, I was a big AMD guy for a long time, and I held on for years. And I just recently went back to Intel, and I'm blown away on how fast the Intel is.
The AMD story is like the story from Palm that we were talking about earlier. You feel bad for them. They really did innovate in a way that was deep and important for the time. We talked about this before, but they did the x64 stuff. Microsoft was trying to move Windows into the 64-bit space. They were using Itanium, which was a freaking disaster, and by the way, an Intel product. And here comes AMD, and they said, it doesn't have to be this complex. What if we just extend x86 with 64-bit instruction set? And then it took Dave Cutler, the NT architect, to look at this and say, this makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And by the way, every single computer sold today, that's what it is. unfortunately, most of them are running Intel processors because Intel just adopted the same scheme. But it was AMD that came up with that, and God bless them for that. It's hard to even imagine how different the PC market would be today if they hadn't done it, and we just sort of accept that as just the standard way that things are, that PCs are 64-bit machines. It never would have happened without AMD.
Interesting stuff, Paul. We got to wrap it up, though.
I guess it has to happen.
I guess it has to happen. We are 2 hours into the show. I have gone through 3 beers, and you have finished a bottle of wine.
There you go, and some Baileys.
And I'm drinking on an empty stomach.
I am too, and now I will go sit on my couch and be surly to my children.
My wife walked in, and she mouthed, 6 o'clock. Really? Already 6 o'clock.
So I got my own wife version of that was just to kind of look around. My wife didn't. It's through glass, so she can't.
Does she know it's a drinking show?
Yes.
Okay.
And it actually, by the way, I have many "my wife is the coolest wife on earth" stories, but my wife actually left this bottle out for me after I told her that I would not be drinking gifted wine. But she looked around the corner and she did the visual version of what your wife did, which is she went like this. Like, what's going on here? It's like after 6.
Yeah, I told my wife that I'm doing a drinking show, and she said, "Oh, listen, don't drink the good wine. I'll go buy you something." And she came back with this. This is her idea of what I could drink during a 1 hour period.
As tragic in so many ways. Did I ever tell you I had a dream? InBev bought Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you, like, if Paul ran the world? Did I ever tell you the story?
No,
How that purchase would have went?
How would have gone through?
InBev produces multiple beers, European beers, including such awesome Belgian beers as like Hoegaarden and stuff like that. So I always, like, in Paul's perfect world, InBev would have purchased Budweiser, and then as its gift to the planet, it would have just shut down Budweiser and said, "No, now you can drink good beer."
Yeah.
But of course, that's not how the world works. So, oh well. I'm sorry you had to drink that beer.
But I like it. It's like the white trash New York Queens
really
thing
is.
that I do.
You almost have to wear like a wife beater T-shirt while you're drinking that, or.
I do have a wife beater. I'm not wearing it because I've been advised by upper management not to wear it ever again on the air. I have a wife beater and a big gold chain that I wear, and I've been told not to wear it, so I wear a dog tag instead. And by the way, my family does own an IROC Z.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. I always wanted an IROC Z.
Yeah, we had one for a long time. My father had a 79 Camaro, then we had an 88 IROC. T-top, by the way.
Of course.
Yeah, it's kind of inbred in you.
I have
here
some
in
great
Queens.
IROC T-top stories we'll share later. Yes.
Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. Also go to stream site gfqlive.tv. Hey, Josh, what you got me? You got Chinese food. Oh, that's excellent because I am hammered right now. I've been drinking since 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so that is an excellent idea. Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com. This was our What the Tech drinking show. So if you're tuning in now for the tail end of this and you're saying, well, why is Paul and Andrew so hammered 6 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast? It's because it is our drinking show. It's because that's what we do. It was our worst off show, and we were discussing the worst tech product stories of the year. You could catch this. I'm sure it'll be up within the next couple hours on our website. Paul will probably have it tomorrow on his website, winsupersite.com. Paul, what is the latest blog on WinSuperSite?
God. Thank you for putting me on the spot.
What is?
It's probably something incredibly silly. I had a. Let me look.
8 is enough. 8 is enough. Keeping the PC safe.
Oh, I did. That's an actual article written by Paul Thurrott.
Yeah.
There was some interesting stuff. Microsoft put out their Christmas greeting today, which is kind of a takeoff of the Google thing because it uses hardware acceleration. There's a cool Left 4 Dead fan film that came out recently, which is on YouTube. I mentioned on my site, which is, if you're a video game fan, is actually kind of awesome. Also worth checking out.
So check it out at winsupersite.com. Check out Paul every Thursday on the Twit Network for Windows Weekly, one of my favorite podcasts, actually. You're in the top 3, actually, Paul. You're in the top 3 of my favorite podcasts.
Oh, okay.
The 2 before you, my personal podcast.
Okay, I was looking for some kind of awesome accolade there, but this is just top 3.
Top 3 podcasts.
What are the other 2?
Everything that involves me.
This is probably not the right time to mention this, but I did spend some time the other day watching some of your other podcasts.
Oh no, which one?
And, let's just say we'll be severing our professional relationship. No,
what did you watch? No, I'm curious.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, was I screaming obscenities?
No, no, not really.
Okay. Was I
actually,
in it?
I found it very. I should, to be fair, I'm sorry, I left that in kind of a weird way. I actually found it very entertaining. I mean, it was kind of the non-tech stuff,
Yeah.
In other words, like what the other 95% of the planet actually cares
Which
about.
was it my show?
It was the Andrew Zarian show,
Yeah.
and then you and your wife and another guy do a show about like celebrities or something.
Well, it's like a general. What I do here at the network for new viewers, we don't just discuss tech. 2 of our shows are tech, and I'm kind of.
If anything, I'm like the redheaded stepchild on this network. So
no, we have professional
it's always
people.
interesting,
we have
like
other
while,
professional
like, I
people
escape
here.
from the attic, and then I can see what's going down.
Yeah, I kind of hope that other people don't see the other shows. But we have a variety of shows. We have a hair loss show. Spencer's in our chat room right now. He does a Ball Truth every Sunday night. It's a 13 years. It was on the radio.
A teeth whitening episode recently, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, no! Somebody did comment on his teeth, though. That is funny. You do say that.
Okay.
I think he said something about before you get a boob job, fix your jacked up teeth. Yeah. I think he said that before.
I can tell you that.
It's a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
But we do offer different types of shows, and one of the shows that I do, it's just me complaining about life and things, and it can be obscene at times. So
sure.
You know what I find funny, Paul? People watch this show and then they watch my other shows, and they're like, "How do you keep it together?
How do you reconcile these two sides of the demon?"
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, well, I'm not like that all the time. It's just after I've had like 6 drinks, that's how I get.
That's pretty much how I am usually.
Yeah.
It's like an effort in self-control that I don't swear more than I do. I
try not to curse, but it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard, especially when you're doing that show on Thursday.
You're from New York.
Yeah.
I'm from Boston. This is how we communicate.
It's exactly how you
I think people from other parts of the country have a hard time understanding that. I was watching the show Dexter with my wife, and the sister of the main character swears all the time. And my wife actually kind of commented on that. And I said, "This is how people talk. What's your problem?"
But we offer everything here at the network. We have a hair loss show. We have a tech show. We have a political show. We have my show, which is nonsense. We have a guy call-in show.
You have your show, which is nonsense.
Yeah, it's nothing. Honestly, my
you
wife
might want to
recently,
work on the marketing aspect of that show.
My wife does voiceover stuff on the side.
Yeah.
And she also has another job, and she is a Disney princess during the weekends.
Oh, come on. Are you serious?
Oh, it's phenomenal.
That is fantastic.
And the company she works for did a commercial, and she is in the commercial.
Of course she is.
So I found the video. I played it over and over again on the air.
Yep.
For this awful local ad.
It's hilarious that you say that, because I never would have come up with that. I could completely picture your wife as a Disney princess. She's a Disney princess,
and she's getting her doctorate any day now. That's the funny part of it.
Just in case you thought there was no a hidden side to this.
She's getting her doctorate. She should have it in in a couple of months. But she's a Disney princess on the side, and the company she worked for did this ad, and we did like a week of just bits on this commercial, this crazy local ad. For her. So we do everything here at the network, and Paul is the dignified one here. After finishing a bottle of wine on the tech show.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is a great way to end the year. Yeah,
crawl my way into the den from here.
Now I'm gonna go upstairs, and she's gonna be like, "How much did you drink?" I'm gonna be like, 3 beers. That's it.
I'm a little disappointed that you're having Chinese food. That is an excellent choice. And I can assure you that I will not be having Chinese food.
No Chinese food for you.
I wish I was having Chinese food.
No, she knew when I drink, I need Chinese food.
No, that's exactly right. I could have talked to my wife.
I'm getting messages from the viewers saying, "Wow, you're hammered." Yeah, you know what? Fridays are generally the day that I get hammered on the show.
Yeah, go figure.
Not on the tech
wait.
show, but now I'm drinking on the tech show. I already told all our advertisers that this is a drinking show.
We should do a worst of every week.
Every week should be this, exactly. Go to our website, guysfromqueens.com, and check out all our other shows. We have a bunch of everything, and that is it for us. And I'm going to go back to bed. Paul, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.